Emergency episodes. Hello, welcome along to 101 Part-Time Jobs. Today I've put aside all plans and I've got Jack from the Snuts on today's episode. The reason being, they're in a chart battle this week to be number one in the UK official albums chart. They're up against Demi Lovato. If they get to number one this Friday afternoon, they'll be the first Scottish band in 14 years to top the official albums chart. 14 years since The View released Hats Off to the Buskers in 2007. It is our duty, if we ever had one, to help this band get to number one on Friday. Thank you for listening. As always, if you haven't subscribed, you know how to. This is episode 98 of a show where I get to speak to so many of our favourite bands loosely about the jobs they've had between tours, survival, keeping themselves sane, and all that stuff. Go ahead and subscribe. Scroll back to see what episodes I've had before. But more importantly, buy a copy of WL, the debut album by the Snuts. They've been working on it for 10 years. That is your job this week, to go and buy that record and try and get them to number one against Demi Lovato. East London's signature brew have been brewing beers since 2011 with bands like Mastodon, Idols, Slaves, Sports Team. If you go onto their website, signaturebrew.co.uk, and you live in the UK, you can order beers of all sorts directly to your door. And with the voucher code 101podcast, all capitals, you can get 10% off. All right, here's Jack from the Snuts. Go well. Cheers! Jack, how's it been going the last couple of weeks, couple of months? All firing for WL, right?
Yeah, man. It's been quite nice, with the world being shut down a bit, just to kind of focus in on the things that, we felt like we were doing right, the things we've been doing wrong, just as a band, making sure that, we come out of this, the other end, just 10 times the band that we were going in.
And that's a big part of it, right? Because, I guess everyone's going to deal with it their own way, but, you touched on it then, being able to look at yourself objectively and being like, how do we do this the way that we like it now, but we're also going to reflect on it positively?
Absolutely, man.
How have you dealt with that over the years? Because I think we're similar age, but we're quite young. Do you know what I mean? Right. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think for us, probably one of the best things, that's happened to us as a band is just being kind of put in spaces and, and with people and producers have kind of allowed us to kind of step out, the brackets that maybe you can kind of find yourself being kind of stuck inside as an indie band, especially in the UK. I think a lot of people expect you to make one type of music, and I think it's actually, you find that you're actually much more true to yourself and true to the music you like and listen to and want to make if you kind of forget about those brackets and those that kind of UK indie genre. And I think you can just make something, that's fresh and is going to kind of help propel guitar music into the future.
Yeah, we all grew up reading the NME, and I suppose there's like this particular model that I imagine that anyone could feel the pressure of trying to fit into what you think it is, trying to be something that you think you should be.
Yeah, I think especially maybe at the start of our journey as a band, it was something we were pretty conscious of, but we noticed pretty quickly that all that really does is kind of hold you back, especially creatively. Right. There's been so many great bands came out of the country, especially in this genre, that I think the most important thing that you can do as a band, in my opinion, is just make sure that you're being yourself and stepping outside that. It's great to take influences from the stuff that you loved and and the stuff that your fans love, I think is important as well. But I think it's just more important to just be true to yourself and create music that is going to be different and is going to still have hints of what people love about you, but just never standing still, and just kind of making sure you're keeping up with the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When you started the band, this is a podcast about the kind of different side jobs that you have between tours, and obviously the last year has been completely different, but you were kind of lauded to have your kind of break, over the last year or so, and it's still happening. It's in the throes of it. What point for you and the rest of the guys was it like, okay, this is our job now?
Yeah, I think it was, I think for us, we were always really driven at the start. After we decided just to put out some demos really early doors, just seeing how they were received, it just pushed us forward, in terms of ambition wise and just dedication, to the craft. we practice 7 days a week. We're a full-time job.
Wow.
We practice 7 days a week. That's what we always do. We still do, man. It's pretty wild,
Wow.
actually. But I think, just I think it's important just for young bands to be able to share their music, and it doesn't really matter what the quality is like or the format. I think in the early days, I think there's a big pressure now in the way that people digest music, that everything has to be, Spotify ready, YouTube ready. It has to be the full package. But I think for us, being able to kind of develop that package as we've kind of grew as a band, has been quite important. So that was a plan. Practice, put out music, be dedicated, and we always we need to get signed to get off of the tools, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a big ambition for us. So when that happened, again, it's just another part of the journey that kind of propelled us ambition wise.
Was it sort of painful at times to be developing in the public eye? You have to kind of put yourself out there to exist, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think certainly now, people's opinions are so so accessible, man. I think I feel like back in the day it'd be much easier, just to ignore any criticisms. But I think they're so upfront and so out there and so easily to find. I think that's another thing you've just got to kind of ignore. Just make the music you want to make. I think you can always tell. Music that's made with real conviction and honesty and hard work. People have got to receive well. Regardless of all the kind of nonsense and the kind of bullshit you get nowadays.
I think a lot of my favorite records, I remember, and a lot of new bands, I'm talking about, the first listen of a record, you can really feel when someone's putting themselves out to be vulnerable.
Yeah, man.
I think you can really smell that, can't you?
Absolutely, man. I think it's something that we're certainly we're conscious of that in our songwriting. A lot of people, personally, that I look up to as songwriters, I think can be their number one thing, their number one selling point, their number one kind of piece of magnetism is just that vulnerability, and being able to kind of express, be it their pain or their anguish or just, what they're about and what they want to kind of relieve themselves of is something I personally really respect about people who make music,
It's being human, isn't it? We're not we're not always cool all the time.
Yeah, man.
And that's
completely agree.
I don't know if that's something that maybe such a cliche for me, but it's like the Beatles. There's so many so many songs in there that you're like, oh my God, like there's such a dichotomy between this person that I hold in such high regard.
Yeah, man.
Also, like they're feeling some pain that might to others seem like silly or something.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. And I think the Beatles are a great example. Probably not just kind of following public opinion, after kind of I want to hold your hand and stuff like that. They probably could have just carried on like that forever, man. And maybe you too with Joshua Tree, you could just, with that kind of success and that kind of public love, you could continue to do that. And I think these bands are great for just carrying on the path that they chose to kind of put themselves on and keep taking risks and keep being creative, keep being honest with their music, because as soon as the honesty goes, that's it, it's gone, man.
One of the things that I find fascinating and that is like, a backbone of this podcast, for me anyway, is the fact of it, you've got that requires so much energy and so much thought and consideration, and then putting that up against what other people might consider like a reality of making money to pay rent, or education, or keeping relationships, friendships going. Yeah. There's so much friction between that.
Absolutely. Like personally, there's like no distinction between my personal life and my professional life. It's just one bit. And luckily, I've got a lot of people around me that they understand my passion for this. And and kind of make exceptions for the fucking way that I act 24/7. So I think to do it and to be just that conviction to be doing it every minute, every day is I like to hope that comes across in our music and comes across in the way that we try and present ourselves. Definitely, I think that's something that's important.
I think it comes across in you personally as well. I've read a few times that you'd be happy to not be the front person. You'd be
Absolutely.
happy to be a guitarist, and that's clearly a role that you've strode into.
Yeah, I mean, growing up as a band when we were at school and stuff like that, we had singers in and out the door, I'm like, watching the singer leave again, like this is going to die. This dream is going to die, and I was always singing in the bedroom, but I necessarily never wanted to be front and center.
Right.
But I think looking back on it, I'm kind of grateful that I feel like that still, because it kind of allows me to be again kind of be vulnerable and stuff like that. Vocally especially, I can be vulnerable and live. In a live setting, I think personally I love watching a band. When you've still got that kind of enigma and that kind of suggestion that there's kind of vulnerability on the stage, and I think people really connect with that. So it's something that looking back, I'm pretty grateful for.
Have there been any moments where you're like, oh fuck, man, like this is a bit hard?
Yeah, man. It's always like, it's such an odd, every time I feel like that is when people are telling me like that was the best show ever, that was like how, but I'll walk off like devastated, thinking that was terrible, I played terribly. And people, that's when you get all your great feedback. Like, for example, we put to the biggest crowd we ever played was TRNSMT in the main stage. And, like, I never look back at that moment, as humongous as it was for us as a band. I never look back and think I really fucking enjoyed that. The whole time I was just like terrified, worried, anxious, hating being up there, which is so odd, man. And people always say, it doesn't come across. But I mean, that is, and I think it's good. You're only human at the end of the day up there. So
that performance is such an introduction to so many people.
Yeah, man.
To the Snuts. I mean, it was my introduction. I was like, oh shit. I was like, I need to listen to this band.
Awesome, man.
That's so funny. I mean,
I'm glad it comes across like that.
Yeah, totally. And I think, there wasn't any part of me that thought, oh, this guy's nervous, but there's certainly like an excitement that was pouring out of you.
Yeah, man. It's I think you dream of the moments, and then when they come, they're just never. They're never how you thought they would be. I think it's that kind of like sensory overload, and you're so focused on being able to like perform, keep the muscle memory right, play well, entertain the crowd, and just all those different factors. Just when they hit you at one, you're like I don't even can hardly remember the performance, just overwhelming, like.
And like the geography of it is obviously going to be important to you as a band.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about practicing 7 days a week. From the word go, being serious about it.
Yeah.
Is it quite hard? Was it quite hard to take it seriously, aged 15, 16?
I think so. I mean, I think we learned pretty quickly when we first started playing live at that age. It was like we treated it the same way we would treat going to someone else's gig. It was a party. It was all our friends. It was just a celebration, and what happened with that attitude was it just left like a lot to be desired. Performance wise, there was none of the skill or the professionalism though that it looks like comes naturally or whatever for like looking at musicians or whatever. But there's a lot of preparation and skill and just that kind of being good at what you do, fundamentally, that we overlooked in the early days as a band, and again, this was all good lessons for us, like what not to do.
Everyone growing up being into music of all sorts, everyone wants to be in a band, it's such a thing. Our generation, our parents' generation, not sure before that, don't really know anyone. But do you know what I mean? It's one of those things that you can try real hard and not get anywhere.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's an absolute, like, I think there is a dedication, to it that requires your 24 hours a day attention, especially as it evolves, man. Because I think ideally it would just be like, I can just focus on making music and that's it, but nowadays it's like the layers to how people come across you and how you get into different places, and especially with guitar music, how do you put yourself into places where people maybe aren't necessarily interested in guitar music, with all the different platforms that you need to be a part of, you need to be a good representation of yourself on all these platforms. So I mean, the time that you put into your brand as a band now is just unbelievable, man.
We're talking about 101 part-time jobs. I mean, that's like a part-time job to what you do, right?
It's outrageous, man. we try and do it with our music as well. First and foremost is just keep moving with the times. Making sure you're a part of the development of the culture as a whole. With guitar music. Keeping on the wheel and never like saying, well, this is what we do, and it worked 10 years ago, so we're going to keep doing it. It's like you need to be developing and face the jury of the modern world almost.
For real. I mean, speaking about those juries, I mean, did you have any other jobs throughout, your late teens? Like, did you have any side jobs to
Yeah, man. Well,
pay for practice room and all that?
yeah, man. Well, basically, so I left school at like 15 or something, early 15. So I was like digging holes for fence posts for about a year, and just every day, 5 in the morning, digging. And then after that, there was a couple of times in our life, and the boys like Callum's a roofer, Jordan's a mechanic, Joe's
No
a
way.
stoner, Joe's a professional stoner. It's actually really funny because I've probably said this in an interview before, and I've said Joe's a professional stoner. So on our Wikipedia, it's like says Jack Carpenter, Jordan mechanic, Callum roofer, and it says Joe stonemason when he just loves smoking blow. But yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of times in our life where we felt like, there's a good chance this isn't going to happen. With the music, and I think it's probably a pretty normal feeling. So we all got a trade, and put the hours into that as well. Just for where we are from, there's always that the big statement. At least you've got something to fall back on. That classic.
Yeah.
But I always liked my job. I was still creating, in the carpentry and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that. And giving it up for this was something you don't really think about. As much as I love this, I think giving something like that up that I was good at and enjoyed, was a big risk.
Yeah, and the cash flow. You can't.
Yeah, man.
Obviously, its own thing. Do you know what I mean? That's like as much. I was thinking about this morning. As much as I like hate caring about money, you got to care. You got to care about it. You got to be good at it.
Well, that's it. We've always put back into the band. To this day, any sort of cash that comes into the band, that goes back into the band. We're always upgrading our live setup. Always picking holes when we record everything we play, all live sets. Pick holes in everything that we do. Like how do we make that better?
You're still digging holes.
Always, man. How's that guitar? That guitar's came in pretty badly. Is this the right mic? Is this the right amp? Is this the right guitar? Just all, and especially this year, I think with the anticipation of live music coming back, we are so focused on like, how do we make this like 10 times what it was? Like we knew we were good at what we did live, but we're like, how do we make that even better? The venues have got to be bigger. There's got to be more expectation on us. How do we feed that appetite? So we're constantly obsessed with that. So all our money just goes right back into this shit, basically, to answer the question.
Do you think that you grew up pretty quick, leaving school at 15, getting a job, digging holes? I mean, the way you talk about the band is so on it.
Yeah, well, I think, but what you've got to remember is, like, I'm basically middle-aged in Scotland at the moment. Our life expectancy is like 48 or something like that.
Is it?
Well, it's not far off it, man. I think the way we were, like, kind of the communities and stuff like that we were brought up in, and the family around about us, and just the general, like, kind of culture that we grew up in, like, it was hard work and dedication will be the thing that gets you where you need to be. That was kind of instilled into us. Yeah. And it wasn't something that, personally, I found hard to kind of bring over to the music, and put that into practice there. I think, like, the work was done for me on, I know that to survive, I'm going to have to work hard. No matter what I'm doing. So it naturally slips into the music. And I think it's great to have that pressure on yourself, because, the amount of pressure on you for outside sources in this game and everywhere for all angles, as long as, I probably focus on the pressure I put on myself more than any other motherfucker. So
right. At least it's coming from yourself. Or is that coming from outside sources, or is that?
I think it's always been me, man. I'm like, I'll never be happy with what we've done, until we're done, basically.
Right.
So I think it's just like, you know, you can always improve, especially like in a creative field. You know, there's always some way to keep getting better. You know, and I think sometimes keep getting better just equates to just be more creative. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I mean maybe when I say that. It's never like about how to be more successful and stuff like that, because I mean any times I feel like when you're getting any sort of success, you don't even notice you've had it till a few months down the line. You know, it's happening, and you don't
Right.
even acknowledge it until it's happened anyway. So it's too late.
How do you deal with that? Does that bring any anxiety to you?
Yeah, man, definitely. But I mean, I think I'm probably like this anyway, regardless the career.
Yeah.
I'm not a big sleeper or a big relaxer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Longest
Yeah.
you'll get me to sit down is in an interview like this. Um,
Brilliant.
but that's and I think it's important, man. It's important to try for me and try and just hopefully channel some of those anxieties and any kind of the stuff that's kind of vulnerable about me as a person. Try and channel that into the songs and into the music, and into the projects that we work on. And then, like, you know, it's at least it's a place to dump them. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, you know, gearing up to WL, obviously you've been, you know, making it or thinking about it for how long? Years at this point?
10 years at least, man.
Fucking wow. So, in the context of the fence job, I mean, when did you finish the fence job? When did that stop?
So I mean that lasted for about like, I mean, I didn't have any qualifications or nothing leaving school, so it was my uncle had a fencing company and he took me on for I think like 6 months. I mean, he expected it to be a few months and I would find something else. And I was like, to be a fencer, you need to be a stocky guy. You know, it's hard manual labour. And after, I think what actually happens, I went to Teen the Park maybe about 3 months into this job, and I didn't take the Monday off. Basically, wouldn't get holidays. So I came back to Teen the Park, went to work that day, was still in some nick. And my uncle just took one look at me like, right, you're this job is no longer yours, basically. But then
That's
again,
funny.
after that, you know, I found my way. I met a great guy who kind of gave me an apprenticeship. Just kept that work ethic up, you know, and kept me driven and stuff like that. Because I think, you know, I find that a lot of kind of young guys, especially where I'm from, you know, it's hard to be motivated, you know, when you don't know what you want to do, man. It's something that's a problem that you see right across the landscape, man. So I think just having good influences in your life and stuff like that who have worked hard to be where they are has certainly been important for me.
That's such a big one. You know, how many people in our generation are freaking out because they don't know what to do?
Yeah, man.
It's a bit of a disease, isn't it?
Yeah, man. It's something, you know what, and I think it's like the root of that problem is much deeper as well. You know, there's a lot of kind of side notes to why that's happening. You know, and there's a lot of kind of social inequalities and stuff like that in these towns, and there's a lot of young people not speaking about what they're feeling, and don't know where to go and don't know what to do to change the positions they're in. And I think again, I mean, that's something that inspires me, and I try and put that in songs. Anything that goes in my songs going kind of subconsciously, and then after that I'll say that's what that line's about, and that's what that line's about, or whatever. But I think it'd be great if we with our music we could open up at least those discussions among each other.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching that Billie Eilish documentary on Apple, and it's amazing. And there's a bit where her mum, Billie Eilish's mum, talks about people always go on about how the younger generation are spoiled, they got this and that, but they're always complaining. It's like, nah, man, young people are like born into a world that's completely fucked. There's like there's war all the time. The economy's in a state. Like you can only get education if you're born into some bit of money.
Yeah.
There's so much to be freaking out about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just the wealth of information now is like just something that for the first time in history where you can see everything that's happening, everything that's happening. You're getting fucking divided by your fucking the media on your phone screen. You're being clickbaited into fucking opinions that aren't yours and you don't understand. And there's just, I think that we're like a social fucking experiment, the young generation, and nobody knows how it's going to turn out, and it doesn't look very fucking. It looks pretty bleak, you know. The results of that experiment, as if you were to look across the board, man. So I think it's good, and I think it's good for it, you know, to be trying to be creative, you know. The now is my point, kind of thing, and you know, and looking at people around you who, you know, are working hard and getting places like Capaldi, for example. You know, I think the boom in my hometown of people who believe in themselves musically after seeing the success of Capaldi, and hopefully people, you know, seeing what we do, is it's just boomed. You know, people are picking up guitars, they're writing songs. You know, they're playing in pubs and clubs, and you know, just being generally inspired to, you know, if he can do it, why can I do it? You know, if they can do it, if she can do it, why can I do it? I think there's something in that, you know.
There's a lot of empowerment in there, isn't there?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and Sam Fender as well. I'm just thinking because you know, pop music's so London centric.
Yeah.
You know, I'm from the outskirts. I'm from Watford, so I can't really see it so objectively. But has that affected the way that, you know, you've organised yourself?
I think so. I mean, maybe kind of in terms of like, I think you can only ever really speak about the music scene that you know almost. I think sometimes, you know, the politics, the other scenes and stuff like that just completely pass you by. You don't know anything about it. But certainly for us growing up, we stay in between Glasgow and Edinburgh. So there was a big scene in Glasgow and there was a big scene in Edinburgh, and you know, we were kind of in this middle zone where didn't necessarily fit into any of those cliques, and our music certainly never either.
Right.
Sonically. So I think that was if anything was the best thing that could have happened to us, you know, because it just gave us that ambition to go, like, we can fucking do this on our own, kind of thing. We don't need to be part of anything to have our voices heard here. And you know, I've heard stories like, you know, like I'm a massive Ben Howard fan, and hearing about like Ben Howard kind of playing outside that London scene was one of the best things that happened to him, you know, because he was just out there on his own.
Yeah.
And people started going, you know, maybe it wasn't finding his cell at the start in these gigs, you know, in the positions that he should have been, but you know, but by not being in that concentration, you know, being in that rat race, I think is something that really does allow you to get on the ladder, at least, because you know the ladder only fucking takes you to the next rat race anyway.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Mate, I know that. I mean, I wonder, you know, to relate it to the point before, you know, this kind of empathy thing. I wonder if people have more empathy when you're not always like looking at what's going to be the next thing in town. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
I wonder if there is a connection there.
Yeah, I think just having that perspective, and I mean, for me, just being honest with your music and you know, being creative to whatever like parameters you decide creativity is, man.
Yeah.
I think that's what people always respond to anyway. You know, people respond to that hard work and creative, honest music, man. That's probably the only thing about music that stands the test of time. And it's not, and that doesn't change kind of generationally or anything. You know, the same bands that worked hard and were creative and honest with their music are, throughout time, always seem to be able to poke their heads up above the water, and you know, people take it on board and connect with it ultimately.
And speaking of Glasgow, you just gave a heap of money to a Glasgow refugee charity. That's amazing work. Well done.
Oh, thanks, man. It's something like something we've always kind of been interested in. We do like a food bank stuff. It's something we've always been interested in. Try and give a wee bit back. I don't think we're necessarily driven financially anyway at this stage of our career. You know, we're just driven musically. And our label, you know, we're really supportive on that front. You know, say do whatever you want with the money. The song that the video is for, Somebody Loves You, has like, you know, all the themes that are in that song, the kind of togetherness, community, empathy, hope, fucking love, all the good stuff, man. I feel like it was kind of embodied with the work that this charity, Scottish Refugee Council, do anyway. And for me, it just made sense to bring them on board and help in whatever way we could, you know, use whatever platform we have just to, you know, if it's a few months of just having their voices heard more than normally would. For me, that's I feel like we're making a direct difference, you know. I think that's something it's kind of lacking, man, now in today's society. Is like try to be direct with the difference that you're making, you know. I mean, it's great that everybody wants to have these discussions now, but it needs to be more than sharing a post or sharing or something. You know, if you want to make direct change, you've got to be direct. You know what I mean? You can't. I think that was not. I'm not trying to blow our own whistles in any way. I think that it's nice to be able to do something that is quite direct in this day and age.
Yeah,
You know?
and for a generation where, you know, maybe we don't have that empathy
Mm-hmm.
built in us necessarily, people are going to respond to that. That's going to resonate with so many people, and more importantly, it's going to, you know, share that, because that stuff is infectious. Because you feel good about it.
Yeah, 100%. That's the thing, and it's like it's quite difficult in today now. You know how to approach stuff like this. You know, because you always want to be really sensitive in how you approach things, and you know, there's just so much out there. You're just ignorant to so many things, and just being able to like work with a charity and stuff like that. You know, it was educational for us. You know, and the things that we don't know about, and you know. A lot of the issues that are like right under your nose, and you know you don't know anything about. You don't even know how to conversate. If that's a word, you don't know how to have the conversations. You know what I mean? So it was a great experience for us, and it came at the perfect time in the lockdown and stuff like that. It was nice to just kind of vent all those emotions that everybody's having, and just kind of put it in one place and kind of be direct about it.
Totally. Well, it's been a total pleasure getting to
always,
chat this
mate.
stuff. It's great to hear, you know, people who love your band. It's great for people to hear what you got to say. You know, I think that's a platform, right?
Absolutely, man. You don't get, you know, it's so easy to say things now in this day and age, but see, to get a chance to just, you know, just rack it out and talk some shit, man, it's good.
Totally.
Appreciate it, man.
I think it's, you know, talking about that platform. Are you constantly stepping it up for
yourself? I think so. You know, we always have kind of ambitions about, you know, when we set out on a project or anything that we do or on a track, you know, always kind of envision where we think it could be and where we'd want it to be received. But you know, I'll be pretty happy if people just take the time to delve into it a bit, try and understand it and stuff like that. It's something when I listen to music, I think a lot of it is, you know, just try to understand what I'm listening to, what whoever's writing it, what they're thinking. Does that apply to me? Do I feel like that? Is this a way for me to, you know, acknowledge that or whatever? So I hope that my big hope for the record is that people can just, you know, absorb it in that sense, and just find out what it's all about, and you know, just get in touch with the themes that are right throughout it, man.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned earlier about, you know, it's interesting to look at the way people digest music now. You know, it goes without saying, people will listen to a record once and maybe, you know, maybe not go back to it again, which is dangerous. And it's pretty, you know, it's pretty sad, because some of our favorite records are the ones that didn't click for a couple of times. I mean, you know, have you had that, you know, making the record, was that always on your mind about how, you know, obviously you want something for people to really buy into.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what's good about this record is it's, you know, it's pretty reflective, and it's got the benefit of time, and how long we've been thinking about it, and you know, and how it ties together, and you know, and there's just a luck, you know, a blind luck of how things come together. You know, when you try and stay on the same path, you know, the one you set out on, and you know, you make sacrifices along the way, and you always make sacrifices with your music as well, and you'd be lying if you say you didn't. I'm just kind of really proud how this one's just with a bit of blind luck and faith has came together into something that packages up everything I'm certainly trying to say and have been trying to say, and the boys have been playing, you know, playing their hearts out on. So I hope that comes across. That's my big one for the record.
I think you're really good at, you know, having an instant hook, and then having those layers as well.
Yeah, well, that's that. I mean, again, it's blind luck, man, isn't it? You know, never set out to go, this song has I think every time you sit down and write a song, you go, I want to go, see if you were to sit down and write a song and you say, I want this to have a massive catchy hook, and I want people to jump around to it, it never works. And if you sit down and say, I want to have this super sad song that people really connect with emotionally, it never works. That's what I find. So I just like, whatever's happening in the moment is usually better than the fucking thing that you thought you were going to do it. You know what I mean? It always seems to be a bit better. So blind luck and faith, man, the classics.
Totally. It's weird to have that thought in an industry where you try and plan out so much.
Yeah, man.
You're planning out things, you're putting a structure on things that are created out of not planning.
Yeah, that's it. And we've been lucky enough to be in with some producers, just with real experience and real insight. You know, I think that's something that we've been really blessed with, meeting people who just really know the pitfalls and stuff like that in making music. You know, everybody thinks they know how to make music, but you know, there's a certain class of individual, I think, that knows when to stop something that's bad and when to continue something that's good. You know, a lot of our music was made really in the moment and with momentum and stuff like that. And then, you know, and there's other stuff that we pick up after 5 years. You know, we never finish it, and then while we're in that creative zone, man, you're like, we can finish that now. You know, there was no hurdle to go over with some of those tracks. Yeah. But you know, we've been really lucky to be able to be a band, man, and to get a chance to make a record, and you know, and just to be at a stage where we're going to put the record out, and so many people already know what we're doing, and you know, and anticipating the record's just a nice feeling, man.
Brilliant, legend, Jack. So good to hear, man.
Thanks a lot,
excited.
Man.
I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, man, it's fucking taking forever, man. I just want to get on to the next one.
That is the kind of attitude that I like. There we go. Jack from the Snuts. If you haven't bought your copy of WL during listening to this, what are you doing? Go ahead and do that right now. Let's get them to number one. What a story that would be. Cheers for listening as always. See you next week. Here's Sparrer.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.